Morning, Trainiacs. Over the last little while, a lot of people have been searching about details on these paddles. So, today I'm going to explain why these, which are called the TechPaddles, are, according to Jerry Rodriguez with Tower 26, the single best swim tool that we use. Way better than any other paddle. In his opinion, in my opinion, they're death. That was a 2,600 meter swim in about an hour, 5 minutes, and then a 20-minute water run with my nice aqua-sizing sash, which is surprisingly intense. Hey Trainiacs, before we head outside into the garage, do you want to see something just absolutely disgusting? Look at this. This is the crap I deal with every single year. So the problem with these more traditional swimming hand paddles can be explained by a story about Alistair Brownlee. And there was an interview that Alistair was doing when somebody asked him about his swim stroke. And he replied with, well, my swim stroke is just pure shirt. But magically, Alistair and his brother Johnny, who have very similar swim strokes, both come out of the water typically like first, second, or like top 5 in most of the races that they do. So why is it that if he doesn't have this good traditional swim stroke, how can he come out so far in front of the rest of the field? Well, it's because the swimming stroke for triathletes is very different than the swim stroke in the pool. And these tend to promote the swim stroke that is very traditionally associated with good pool swimming, traditional speed swimmers, college swimmers, high school swimmers. We are triathletes and we need a different technique. This doesn't allow that. So 2 of the biggest problems that triathletes have with their swim stroke that works in a pool, not too bad, but doesn't necessarily work in open water, can be shown really well in a demonstration by your favorite winter trapped triathlete. So here we have some footage from me swimming. It was about 6 weeks to 10 weeks after I had started swimming with Tower 26 and before I had started undoing a lot of those traditional pool swimming techniques that I'd developed over the years. A lot of people would say, hey, Taren, you've actually got a really nice pool swimming stroke. But for some reason, when I would get into open water, I wasn't drastically faster than the rest of the triathletes out there. And there's one really big reason why. And I'll show you here. There's one spot that you can look at and see exactly what I'm talking about. And it's right there. So if you have ever learned the total immersion style of swimming, you likely do this. Front quadrant swimming is where you have both hands over top of your head at the same time. And why that isn't a good thing for triathletes is because we are out in open water where there's waves and there's current and there's a lot of chop. So there's a lot of force coming at us that isn't in the pool. And what's happening is when we have both of those hands up here, if we have one hand that's out there and it's not doing anything the entire time that the other hand is coming out, what's actually putting propulsive force into getting you forward? Well, it's your kick. Us triathletes have crappy kicks. Pro swimmers can get away with it for 2 reasons, because their kick is probably about 10 times stronger than ours. So as they are gliding, they are still moving forward from their kick, and each big stroke that they push out with is about 30 times more propulsive than ours is. So they have a stroke that is pushing them a lot further, actually generating more power, and a kick that is allowing them to still move forward while they're doing that front quadrant swim. Us triathletes cannot get away with that. Now, the next problem that a lot of triathletes have is very common. It's a dropped elbow, and this is really common because we don't have the shoulder and upper body mobility that a lot of speed swimmers have. Now take a look at this here, and you can see basically right there. If we are to draw a line from my shoulder through to my wrist, you can see that my elbow is underneath my arm line. What we would ideally want is it to go out and down so that the surface area of the forearm can act with propulsive force to push water back, moving us forward. Now, why we can't do that as triathletes is because we have stiff upper bodies. We aren't Gumby like high school athletes and college athletes who grew up having to develop that shoulder mobility. So here's where all of these traditional paddles go wrong, and whether it's this paddle or the Finis Freestyler paddle, the one that looks like that, basically any traditional paddle, it makes generating force easier. So the two things that we are trying to overcome and trying to be more like Alistair Brownlee, more punchy, more dynamic, more aggressive, this gives you a crutch that doesn't force you to become that way. Number one, it gets you out in front, and because it gives us the ability to push water back more than we normally do, we can simulate swimming like an elite swimmer. And that's not what we want. We want boom, 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 boom. Think Alistair Brownlee, not Ian Thorpe and Michael Phelps. So if you've never tried these, the first thing that you can do to get an idea of what these are like, and you might have done this before, is if you've ever swam with fists. You know that it isn't easier, it's actually harder, but it forces you to get out and start moving really quickly because you don't have a big catch whooshing a whole lot of water back. Also forces you to get that forearm up nice and high to use that forearm because you can't use your hand. These are basically the same thing. It forces you to go into a fist. It forces you not to go back like that because that's going to create turbulence, sending you back and forth. And it's going to force you to get a little bit higher to have to push all of that water back. In addition to that, you might be able to hold a really long, tight body line with these because you've got that anchor at the front. But with these babies slapped to your wrist, instead of having a really big set point at the front of your stroke, these create turbulence. So it actually kind of shimmies and instabilizes your body. So it's not only going to develop a better stroke with your arms, it's going to force you to stay really nice, tight, rigid, and as Jerry from Tower 26 would say, taut. It's going to eliminate any of that sag that you've got side to side, that wiggle which so many of us have. This makes life harder, not easier. So I've actually heard Jerry from Tower 26 say that these hand paddles, of all of the, I think, half dozen swim toys that he says you have to get if you're going to be on the program, these are the most important. More important than a pull buoy, more important than a snorkel, more important than an ankle band, more important than the stretch cords, more important than all of that is these paddles. And he says that if you're going to use any paddles whatsoever, you use these. If you have other paddles and you haven't yet purchased these, he doesn't even let you use the other paddles. You have to swim with fists instead because he says that these paddles will actually make you potentially a worse swimmer if you have a lot of the common faults. In my case, he literally banned me from using hand paddles. Ever. His words, no hand paddles for you, Taren. Ever. So if you ever do a swim analysis and you see that you have both hands over top with that front quadrant swimming, if you see that you are wiggling a little bit, if you see that your elbow is dropping a little bit, get yourself some TechPaddles. I have the big ones. I don't recommend the big ones. When I was at the Tower 26 program, pretty much everyone had the little ones, so get the little ones. Right, Pete? Can you come up? Can you make it? It's like a show dog. You see that? You just made it up like nothing. All right, Trainiacs, if you aren't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button below. And if you are subscribed, I like you just as much as Petey likes being up here, right? What about you, Grace? You want to come up? Can you make it? Hurry. You can do it too. Oh, you've got a career in the circus. Oh, both of you.